Whether companies like HyperX like it or not, Corsair via Elgato have created a bit of a Tesla Model 3 killer effect where a number of reviews of new streaming microphones, well, they're all viewed through the lens of how does this compare to the Elgato Wave 3? And to be honest, this review is no different, but there is a good reason for that. Thanks to its mix of features, audio quality, sound quality, and especially right now, its price tag, it's pretty hard to beat and a good bar to set as a reference for your other options like this HyperX QuadCast S. To give you a rundown, the QuadCast S is a USB condenser mic with 3 separate 14mm condensers inside, which combine to offer 4 different pickup patterns, all of which can be selected with a very nice notched dial on the back. It's actually a very premium build quality and unit in general, both in its price tag, but also in the build quality. Is its main body is metal, and everything else that's here is either a nice soft touch plastic, also metal, or just generally relatively high quality plastic as well. Even the gain or volume control knob on the bottom is ludicrously smooth and just well reinforced and just very premium feel. Specs wise, it lists a frequency response range of between 20 and 20,000 hertz, or the human hearing range, which is actually an improvement, at least on paper, over the Wave 3's 70 to 20,000. The analog to digital converter, or ADC, runs at 48 kHz and outputs 16 bits of resolution, both of which, at least again on paper, are actually a downgrade compared to the Wave, which instead offers up to 96 kHz and 24-bit resolution. Both use USB-C on the back for their data and power, and both also have a 3.5mm jack next to those USB-C ports for monitoring your audio. Both also use capacitive mute buttons up at the top and have physical dials for things like volume control, or in the QuadCast case, the pickup pattern, or in the Waves case, it's a more digital dial that you can click through different settings for both the microphone's gain, the output or the headphone monitoring volume, and the crossfade between desktop audio and monitoring as well. But it is also a notched dial versus this very nice and smooth premium one, albeit a less feature-rich dial on the QuadCast. One clear advantage of this HyperX mic is the inclusion of a shock mount in the box. It's actually a pretty nice one too, and while it isn't a traditional style, you can't slip another mic in here as it's literally screwed into the body in multiple locations. It is rather well built and even comes with a little boom arm adapter that lets you screw this onto an existing boom arm if you have one and attach your mic to that instead. There's also a nice and easy to turn and tighten thumb screw. That's all that holds it in. And actually, if you do leave it on the very nice metal desk stand, it has sort of limits to its movement so that you can't accidentally knock it all the way over, whatever. It's nicely designed and it's well sort of refined to be a nice user experience. Also, since we're talking about the desk stand, I should mention that this is also well designed as it has a nice little cutout for your USB and audio or headphone jack cables, no matter what position the mic is in on the stand, which I thought was a really nice touch. So, as normal, I'm recording with both the HyperX QuadCast S and the Elgato Wave 3 simultaneously, and I'll put a note on screen to let you know which one of the two that you're listening to at any given point. Now, like I said, I'm starting with the cardioid pattern on the QuadCast S, as that is the mode that anyone who is streaming, who is, sitting at their desk with their fancy panel lights behind them and playing some games, will probably want to use. I think on the whole, it sounds pretty clear, pretty crisp, and actually fairly true to life as well. It's a relatively good representation of what my voice actually sounds like, and by comparison, the Wave 3 is perhaps a little less true to life, it's a touch softer, and it definitely emphasizes the bass tones a touch more, which, while that is sort of less true to life, I generally feel that the Wave offers a slightly nicer, more a sort of professional, I guess, listening experience by comparison. On the whole, they're fairly similar in terms of the perceived quality to me, even if their individual attributes aren't, identical. Interestingly, when it comes to background noise, the QuadCast S technically, I think, is a little less, less good at rejecting that background noise. But if you listen to the Wave 3, you'll likely hear more background noise on that take, and you'll probably be confused to why I say that. And that's because the way that I have these set up right now, I'm using the Wave 3 basically as it comes out of the box with its default stand, as I'm doing the same with the QuadCast S. I built my PC into my desk. It's literally bolted all in just over here, and so what that means is that all of the fan noise, all of the vibration, the whirring from hard drives, or the one hard drive I still have there, is being translated directly into the Wave 3, which is why you're hearing quite a bassy background noise. Whereas because the QuadCast S is shock mounted out of the box, you don't get as much of that, bassy rumble as much as you just get the actual background noise itself, which is something that the Wave 3 seems to be a little bit better at rejecting. In my testing, the QuadCast S had a bit of almost a strange quirk to the noise where, especially on louder S sounds, I had a bit of distortion, a bit of, it's hard to describe, but it sounded something like a mix of certain frequencies were getting clipped, and the stereo mix was slightly sort of echoed or duplicated a couple of milliseconds behind. It was only for a very small section, but I did notice it, and so if obviously I don't know whether this specific recording is actually capturing that, and so if it is and you're seeing this, then you'll know that I heard what I heard in my testing. Of course, if you're not seeing this, then, well, you won't hear me talking about it, so let's move on. One feature that the QuadCast S is missing compared to the Wave 3 is what Elgato calls clip guard. Basically, the mic is recording two different levels of your audio simultaneously, and whenever you get too loud and the audio clips, as in it starts to sound distorted and pretty nasty, it automatically switches over to the lower volume level until you return to a normal level again. So let me demonstrate. Obvious warning, this is going to be loud, and especially on the QuadCast S, it's not going to sound so great. If you shout into the HyperX mic, it sounds terrible! Whereas shouting into the Wave 3 is still loud, but it's just clear as normal. Now, while that is a somewhat niche feature, for the occasional shout or hysterical laugh or whatever else, retaining the full sound quality and honestly just not being a sort of upsetting tone is definitely a nice feature. One software tweak that I would like to see HyperX make, that I think they should be able to do relatively easily, is to do with the mute button. See, both of these mics use a capacitive mute button, which is great. It means that it's nice and easy to gently tap and it's muted, and then you tap it again and it springs back to life. But the tweak that Elgato puts is a tiny fade, a tiny sort of transition when you mute the mic. It's really short, it's really, kind of unnoticeable if you aren't looking for it, but it adds an extra layer of quality and just, it's a nice little touch. Have a listen. If you unmute it, it's a very gentle, sort of just quick fade in. Whereas on the HyperX mic, if you mute again, especially if you're talking or making noise or there's any, audio coming through, it can be a little bit jarring that it just clicks back into life instead of the slight nice fade that Elgato does instead. It is also worth noting that on the QuadCast S, when you mute the mic, by default, the RGB LEDs that are inside the case, they switch off to indicate that the mic is muted, but unfortunately, that doesn't have any, there's no differentiation between the mic just being off or unplugged and it being muted. Of course, it's very easy to find that out. You can just tap the top, and if it doesn't respond, it's not working. But there's no other activity light. There's no kind of way to tell between the two without actually touching it. And so, well, you can also switch that around or invert that in their software to where the lights only come on when it is muted, which in theory is better. In practice, again, you then don't know if the mic is working or if it's just unplugged. There's no differentiation. I like the way that Elgato do it. They have a white LED ring around the sort of volume control knob, and when you mute the mic, that turns red to indicate it's muted, and of course if the mic is off or unplugged, none of the lights are on, and so it's easy to know which is which. And I think that should be something that HyperX could add here, the option to, in their software, set a mute color so that the RGB lights set to, say, red when the mic is muted, but then when unmuted it can, turn the lights off, or it can go back to the RGB pattern that it has by default. Lastly, I have to show you the different pickup patterns. The one you're now listening to is the stereo mode. So in theory, if I, come around to the side and then come around to the other side, or if I click on my left and then the right, you should hear a differentiation between your ears. This, I know I joked about it being an SMR mode, but in theory the main purpose of this mode is if you're, say, recording a live session with your band and you're all sort of huddled round it in a semicircle, that's going to be the best pickup pattern for that style of, recording. By contrast, this is the bidirectional mode. This is the sort of thing that you would have if you're having a face-to-face interview or podcast with someone where you only have one mic just sitting in the middle between you. So in theory, you should hear a click on the front and equally on the back. So you can hear that sort of, two sides of a conversation type thing. And lastly, this is the omnidirectional mode, or the 360 mode if you like. This one is for the sort of stick this in the middle of a round table and have your discussions, podcast, whatever, or if you're recording a group session or something like that where you have people all around this one microphone. That's in theory what this is for. Again, you should hear the clicks evenly all the way around the mic. And yeah, that's the different modes. A couple of things I've yet to mention. Yes, this has RGB. Yes, I find it distracting, and I would probably just set it to either a fixed color or dim the brightness significantly. Yes, you can configure it at least a little in their Ingenuity software, but it's pretty basic, especially compared to Wavelink. All it does is let you adjust a couple of volume options and change the RGB lighting, sort of colors and effects. You don't get many settings to actually control the mic itself, an EQ or equalizer to modify the sort of output profile, or any integration with desktop audio sources to nicely mix them like you can with Wavelink. It does have a sort of integration with certain games, so if you open certain games or programs, you can switch which profile it will use, but the profiles are so limited that I'm not sure that's an overly useful real-world feature. It's also only available through the Microsoft Store unless you use the much smaller, sort of more obfuscated link to download it directly. So it's okay, but it's certainly nowhere near as feature-rich as Elgato's offering. It's also worth mentioning the size difference. Just the QuadCast's actual mic body itself is the entire height of the Wave 3, including the Wave 3's stand. If you compare body to body, the Wave 3 is a good, sort of healthy 15 centimeters or 6 inches versus the QuadCast at I would call substantial 9 inches or so, or about 22 centimeters. And if you have limited desk space and you want to sort of tuck your microphone under or behind your monitor, the Wave 3's both shorter stature and slimmer stature is actually going to be a pretty significant benefit and a better fit. I know for me, I couldn't fit this where I hide or sort of store my Wave 3, so that may play into a factor if you have a limited desk space. Overall, I do like the QuadCast S. It offers a noticeably premium build and materials quality while still remaining practically designed. I'm looking at you, NZXT, and it's also a pretty decent sound quality overall. You get a good amount of versatility from all of the different pickup patterns, so if you want a more versatile option that's still relatively premium and premium feel, then it could be a good shout. Unfortunately, at its current price tag of £160, compared to the 110 that you can pick up the Wave 10 for, the Wave 3 for right now, well, that's a pretty hard sell. The Wave is arguably a better overall package with more features, comparably good audio quality, and at 30% less cash, or the QuadCast S is about 45% more if you look at the other way. It's hard to recommend the QuadCast S fully. Still, it is a good product, and on the whole, for the right sale price, I think it would be, and obviously for the right use case, I think it's a reasonable option. With that said, those are my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the QuadCast S, and how do you think it compares to the Wave 3? If you are picking up a streaming mic, which one of these would you prefer? And also feel free to let me know if you're maybe not that sort of type, or you have some other preference instead. Maybe you do want to spend the extra and get a full-blown sort of XLR setup instead. Feel free to let me know in those comments down below. If you want to check out the QuadCast S, or the Wave 3, I'll leave links to it in both of them in the description down below. Those will be Amazon affiliate links that will take you to your local Amazon store where you can see pricing when and where you watch this, and of course pick one up if you fancy. There's also a load of ways that you can both support the channel. You can do that and stay up to date with these new videos by hitting the subscribe button and turning the bell notification icon on. I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so do feel free to pop back pretty much any day of the week, and there'll probably be a new video up somewhere. And yeah, there's also, of course, more direct ways you can support, sort of monetarily if you like. There's the YouTube join button where you get access to our Money Men Discord chat, sponsor-free videos, and access to some cool emojis to use in the comments and on our weekly live streams. You can also support on Patreon instead if you prefer, and still get access to our Discord, or pick up a hoodie or t-shirt like this one, or a load of other designs that I made myself. This one is in Blender. But yeah, that's kind of it really. As always, there will be plenty of other affiliate links in the description if you want to check those out. I'll leave some more reviews on the end cards if you want to take a look, maybe the NZXT capsule if you're interested. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next video.